Hello, and welcome to the movie universe. I'm your host, Movie Fan. Well, as we all know, the 30th anniversary of Power Rangers is on its way this year, and because of this, I had to do a top 5 list on all the anniversaries that we've had so far. So let us begin with our top 5 Power Rangers anniversaries. Starting with, of course, number 5, the Legend War, or Legendary Battle if you prefer. Now, this one is no secret to everybody. We all know this one really well because this episode was the biggest disappointment that we have come across in a long time. And it goes without saying that this is the worst anniversary episode ever made because Saban really let everyone down in the worst possible way. Now, it's no secret, but I'll tell you anyway. What happened was we get the Power Rangers from the past coming to unite with the Megaforce Rangers to take out an army of putties. The big villain was already dealt with in space. All that was left was the putties on Earth just heading towards town. And of course, there was too many of them, so they needed more help. And so the Power Rangers of the past show up and they help them. The only real good moment about this would be Jason David Frank because he says,
"You don't have to do it alone this time. We're here to fight by your side. We'll always be with you."
and yeah, that really is the only shining light in this whole matter. Because, the rest of them, they didn't show because Saban was being cheap once again. Karen Ashley herself said that the money they were going to get paid wouldn't have even covered the plane ticket. So, enough said there. And of course, Jason made it very clear he was only doing this for the fans because, he's always been dedicated to us all. And having him there was really the only good thing. The rest of it was a real snore. Because we all saw the Super Sentai footage. They fight these putties, and you see every Ranger from the past. Whereas for this, you don't. You see some Rangers from the past fighting, but all they focus on is mostly the Megaforce Rangers. And even more important, in Super Sentai, they had a Megazord battle. And Saban just didn't bother with it at all.
What was even more annoying is the fact that actually it did not take place on the 20th anniversary. In fact, it took place a year later because Saban was too busy building up all the hype for this that the Legend War was overdue. We waited 2 years for this episode, and what did we get out of it? The Rangers teaming up to fight putties for less than 2 minutes.
So it's no wonder why this episode is in the bottom of the list. And with that being said, we'll move on to number 4, Once a Ranger. Now, this episode is very memorable, but at the same time, it did let the fans down quite a bit as well. But not nearly as bad as the Legend War. Because with this one, we get Rangers from the past uniting with the Operation Overdrive Rangers to fight Thrax, who is Rita and Zed's son. Somehow they had a son, and even after Zordon purified the universe, somehow he exists. Anyway, this episode, it's good, but it's not that good. Because, the only real redeeming quality here is we got Adam. And it was nice seeing him talk to Kira from Power Rangers Dino Thunder. Because there's a moment where he's talking to her and he says,
Oh, what an incredible command center. Dr. O would have loved to see that.
Hey, I still can't believe he's a doctor.
That made that moment really awesome. Unfortunately, the episode falls flat on its face because of the plot. Apparently, their leader called the Rangers from the past in because, well, he intended to replace them with them. And then later on, it turns into a whole, we're trying to prove ourselves to our leader that we can do this. So you can see why this episode isn't the greatest anniversary ever. And with that being said, we're going to move on to number 3, Power Rangers Super Legends. Yeah, I know. It's not really an episode, but still, this game was actually designed for the 15th anniversary. And it's actually pretty darn good. Because with this game, you get to play as past Rangers. Now, you don't get to play as all of them. And yes, the Megazord battles are very disappointing. It also doesn't help that it's very repetitive. It's just basically a beat-em-up type. You just go through, you're beating up bad guys, and, you can't lose. You really can't. Every time you die, you come back like nothing. There's not even a limit here. So, you are unbeatable. You could just keep trying and trying and trying until you get bored with it. And I hate to admit it, that does happen to me quite often when I play this game. But it is fun to go back and play as some of my favorite Rangers. And because it's really not a Power Rangers Anniversary episode, just a video game, And because of its boring nature, well, that held it back a good some. But because it does a lot better than Once a Ranger did, and it's certainly a lot better than the Legend War, that's why it's at number 3. So, what comes next? Well, we're going to find out with number 2, Dimensions in Danger, better known to some of us as the 25th anniversary episode. This one I have raved about like crazy, and rightfully so, because this more than made up for what happened in the Legend War. Because here, it's not so complicated, it's not overhyped like the Legend War was, and most importantly, we get Tommy for a lot longer than we did back then. And to make things even more awesome, we are introduced to his Master Morpher, which gives him the ability to turn into every Power Ranger that he was. And the episode is further enhanced by the fact that we run into Kat and Rocky. Now, Kat, I've always had my issues with, but I did love her in Zeo, and she hasn't been seen since Turbo came around, so that was awesome. And as for Rocky, that was a great moment to see him back in red once again. And as we all remember, we hadn't seen him since the first episode of Power Rangers Turbo. And here, he does get a speech going on when they morph. It's not a huge speech, but it's still great, just because, we hadn't seen him for so long. And finally, we get something out of it. And with all that being said, we're going to move on to number 1, Forever Red. Now, this comes as a surprise to no one, I'm sure, because this episode is legendary, and I mean legendary. The plot behind this is the last remnants of the Machine Empire are looking for Serpentera so they could try to rebuild the Empire and take over the universe. Of course, Andros, the Red Ranger, has been keeping an eye on things, and he calls Tommy Oliver, who calls all the other Red Rangers that were around at that time. It was great to see them all together, because, such a thing had never been attempted before. That was one of the things that made it so awesome. And what made it even more awesome was to see Tommy and Jason back together again.
Jason,
You guys weren't gonna do this without me, were you?
I was starting to wonder whether you'd show up at all.
You didn't think I was gonna let you do this without the original Red Ranger, did you?
And it was great watching them take on the Machine Empire. They still had the moves. And watching them all morph one by one.
Well, what are we waiting for?
Let's do it, guys.
Morphin' time! Rhinosaurus! Mighty Morphin' Power Rangers! Morphin' time! Red Seal Ranger! Ah! Shift into turbo! Red Turbo Ranger! Yeah! Let's rock it! Red Space Ranger! Go! Galactic! Go! Galactic! Blade speed! Rescue! Red Light Speed Ranger! Yeah! Time forward! Time force! Time force! Yeah! Quantum power! Quantum Ranger! Ha! World access! Red Wall Force Ranger! Red Alien Ranger! Yeah! All right, guys, let's do it.
The way it all played out, the episode was great. It was absolutely perfect. And, I love how they used Beetleborgs as the bad guys in this one. I know, we can laugh at them for this, but it's still great. And we can't blame Saban for this either, because Disney made this episode. Granted, it has two big hiccups. The first one is that Serpentera is obviously made out of very cheap CGI. And the second is how Serpentera is destroyed. Yeah, Serpentera, the mightiest Zord in Power Rangers history, one that's so powerful that it literally drains its battery power in no time flat. The one that makes the mightiest Megazord look like a little ant. It's destroyed by a motorcycle, kamikazing right into it. Yeah, I would have expected a lot more, and I know we were all hoping for a Zord team up for this, but for some reason, Disney didn't do it. But either way, the good definitely outweighs the bad here. Because, you got all these Red Rangers throughout history. You got Jason and Tommy back together again as a team. You got the great martial arts choreography. And you got the bonus of having Beetleborgs in it. When you put that all together, you really have the greatest anniversary episode ever made in Power Rangers history. And right now, we're waiting to see what happens next. Let me know what you think. This is Movie Fan, signing off.